According to Forbes magazine, you are the world's best futurologist. And according to Harvard Business Review, you are, I want to be precise, the leading architect of transformation. Yeah, that's correct. Inc. magazine calls you Silicon Valley legend. And the first question, how does it feel? I mean, is it that too much of a burden to carry? how you do that? How you become #1 futurologist in the whole world?
You start with the easy questions.
Yeah.
These are things people say about me. You know, I just try and do hard work and be of service, helping companies make a better future.
Yep.
And that's what I'm committed to, is what are the things we can do as a species to make possible the future that we all deserve.
Okay.
And sometimes it has to do with helping companies transform. Sometimes it has to do with helping them develop better products. But it almost always has to do with being of greater service, making things that make the world a better place, that make our lives better.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we're going to be more successful as businesses and be of greater service to society.
Yeah, indeed, because forecasting the future, not only design a forecast, but you also shape the future here and now. Yeah, because just talking about the future, stimulating the debate about the future, makes the change right here and right now. Yeah.
I think that there is so much more that is possible for all of us and for all of our organizations than we imagine. And the question is, who's going to spur that? You know, that bigger picture thinking, that new vision.
Yep.
And all of us can do it. And we can do it by asking 3 simple questions. They're really simple questions. The first is, are we fighting the last war? Right? So in businesses, when something goes bad, we'd say, like, let's figure out how to make that not happen again. Yeah. But we figured out how to deal with it. Why are we focusing on that instead of the next thing that's going to happen?
Yep.
Right? How do we deal with that? So how do we avoid dealing with the last war? The second question is, are we over-focused on what's in front of us? Are we using binoculars? Are we using binoculars instead of a radar? Because inevitably, when you over-focus on what's in front of you, hitting your KPIs, hitting your targets, hitting your quarter, yep, all of those things, incredibly important. I'm not saying that they aren't. But what inevitably happens is that the future comes from over here and knocks you upside the head, right? And then the last piece is what I call the elephant problem, right? So often we get so focused on all of the data. There's something going on over here. There's a tassel on the tail. There's this beautiful tusk. There are these beautiful legs. And we ignore the elephant in the room. If we ask these 3 questions, right? How am I fighting the last war? Am I using binoculars instead of a radar? And do I suffer from the elephant problem? Is there an elephant in the room? Yeah. If we ask these in any meeting, inevitably it's going to be true. And it helps us see the future. It helps us see the thing that's right in front of us. Yep. That we're missing.
Okay. You once said, I don't predict the future. I study decision makers or decision making as a process under uncertainty. Yeah. What do you mean by this? Is there a proper method or methodology of predicting the future? And we have some, foresight projects, the Delphi methods and stuff. What is your approach?
I'm a big fan of Delphi methods, by the way. Because this is a method where it's a game of telephone where one person writes down something, sends it to another expert, who sends it to another expert, and then it goes around in a circle. And so you get a range of truth. You can also, if you aren't careful with the questions and the curation, you can also get a reflectorium. Yep. And so that's the challenge with the Delphi method, is you want to bring some people who aren't experts into the room to say, is that true? Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Delphi method. I think the first question is, what's going on out there that's not yet in the news? So I spend a good chunk of my year traveling the world, going to change spots on the planet. So I was in Kiev last week, and 2 weeks from now I'm in Hong Kong and Shenzhen to see what has happened in the manufacturing centers of China since COVID. We go to Singapore Israel, so on, Saudi Arabia, so on and so forth.
Every place all over the world where the tensions are...
Where there's technological change or tension. We'd spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley to see what's possible, what's not in the news yet, right? My experience in Kiev was not what I had expected based on television. So if you aren't actually touching the future, if you're relying on the news, you've got to remember the news is a historical document.
Yeah.
Even Wired magazine, Technology Review, they're historical documents. They are not documents of the future. If you aren't there touching it, you're missing what's possible.
I understand that. Okay.
I mean, we can go more technical and deep. I just didn't know how deep you wanted to go.
Oh, we can do. That's deep enough. But,
okay.
Yeah, but I understand. So, okay, so let me ask you another one. Rogue wave. We already talked about it. So, dzikie fale in Polish.
Dzikie fale.
Yeah. Central concept, central term of your book. Yeah. What are they, and why are they so important?
In the deep ocean, 120-foot tall walls of water can pop up in an instant. So 40-meter walls of water pop up out of nowhere.
Okay. Perfect storm.
You don't have, the perfect storm is a great example. When they hit, you don't have time to respond. But they're the result of small, individually manageable waves coming together, focusing in one time in one place. So they're random events, but often the likelihood of them grows dramatically if you are on the southern tip of Africa, where multiple ocean currents collide, and there's a storm in the Southern Ocean pushing up against the continent. All of a sudden, like, the likelihood of a rogue wave there goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And so if you're stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, these things that are random at one scale are much more knowable at another. You don't necessarily know exactly what thing's going to happen and when and where, but you know that it's becoming more likely. I think something similar happens in business. I think something similar happens in your life. And if you take the time to understand not necessarily what that rogue wave is, will it be COVID? Will it be Ukraine? Will it be Trump becoming president?
Yeah.
Will it be a breakup of the European? Who knows what it's going to be? The question is, how will it stress you? How will it stress your business? Yeah. Because those stressors are often relatively consistent on your organization, whether it's a meteor hitting the earth, a solar flare, or a currency crisis.
We should be ready.
We should be ready, not for these things individually,
but for the change.
But for the range of change that's possible. And often this is a mindset shift, right? It's not a radical increase in cost. The cost savings come from the efficiency gains and the ability to win when the world changes. So the question becomes, are you ready to win? Do you want to win in normal times or when the world changes?
Well, and it will change.
If you think that the world's changing more than ever, maybe the strategy we've had for the last 40 years, where trade harmonization is going up, demographics have been positive, peace has been going up, maybe we want to rethink our strategy for working in a time of disruption, working in ways that benefit from disruption instead of avoiding it.
So basically we should be ready for anything.
We should be ready for how anything will impact us.
Okay. Yeah, that's an important difference. Okay. So speaking about differences, what is the difference between the concept of a rogue wave and the concept of a black swan, as Nicholas Taleb describes it?
So Nicholas Taleb deals with something called long-tail risk. So there's like this the stuff we know about, and then there's this like long line of random, hard to calculate risk. And what he claims is that we misunderstand the amount of this risk. I 100% agree with him. What he also says is that there are black swan events, things that are non-calculable, non-predictable risks. I don't think he thinks that 2008 financial crash was a black swan. He doesn't think COVID was a black swan. My point is, these things that the people who clearly did not write the book say are black swan events aren't. Often they're rogue waves. They're the result of things that we didn't predict coming together at the same time in the same place coming together.
Probably the next example, great example.
It's a great example, but it was also a knowable example, right? We didn't know that it was going to be COVID, and we misunderstood as epidemiologists that there would be this kind of disease where it was relatively communicable, but not highly communicable, and it was relatively deadly, but not highly deadly. There would be this thing in the middle. We'd modeled these other things. We hadn't really modeled this specific type of risk. But what we did know, and I was talking to epidemiologists before this, is that there are three things that are true in life. Death, taxes, and that we'll get sick. Yeah. Novel viruses happen all the time. They hit, every 12 years, let's say it or so. Used to be less often, but as we've gotten more connected as a species, they're starting to happen more and more frequently. Yeah. And what we also knew was, we have the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan for a reason, that a lot of novel viruses happen around there. Yeah. So what we knew was that this was the kind of place where this would happen. Yeah. We knew that we'd built 16 high-speed rail lines around China so that if that happened there, it would move in a different way than it had before, and that we built transit out of China.
There are more than a dozen of scientific papers about this SARS-CoV potential epidemic in the China region or Wuhan region years before the pandemic.
And we weren't paying attention. This was a knowable risk.
Yeah, it was a rogue wave, not a black swan, as you described it. Okay. Publican, our agency, is celebrating 18 years anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah. In Poland, 18 years mean you can buy a beer and to go to vote legally. So that's an important anniversary for us. And that anniversary inspired us, as we are coming out of age, to reflect on the past and the future. So the 18 years will serve us as a counterpoint for the next two questions. First one, especially for you. In your opinion, the biggest rogue waves we encountered or we had to face as a domain of communication, advertising, media, PR during the last 18 years? Pick one or two.
Yeah. Well, I think the rise of the internet and the mobile phone and social media would be the obvious massive shift. And I would think the global nature of PR, that something can move so much more quickly across groups now than it did before.
Okay. And thank you. And the last but not least question is about the future. So 18 years from now, what rogue waves we as a PR market or professional communication market will have to face, in your opinion? The biggest rogue waves, maybe the most interesting in your opinion. What's coming?
So as a result of the internet and social media, we've moved from a highly communal society or civilization to one that where people have much more individual interests, much more focused interests. Yep. When you think about AI, when you think about chatbots, when you think about avatars, video versions of
metaverse,
we're going to be talking to machines. We're going to be having conversations with machines. We're going to be having conversations with politicians and brands. In the next 2-3 years, I can totally imagine a world where Kylie Jenner, one of the Kardashians, instead of getting on TikTok, your kid has her on the phone giving her advice on her makeup in the bathroom. It's a virtual version of her having a conversation just with your kid.
But
right?
The version of her that we cannot, recognize real from fake. So
absolutely, and she'll teach your kid how to look better. She'll probably give your kid a boost to go to school, have a great day. These devices, these brands, they won't be, one-to-many. They'll truly be one-to-one relationships where Kylie is having a different relationship conversation with your daughter than she is with my daughter.
Yeah.
That gets really weird because now we're talking about brands that aren't based on a underlying brand platform, but on a desire to persuade you specifically.
Mm-hmm. So, as I interpret your answer, the problem of Chinese room will be solved in the next 18 years because we will not recognize the AI from talking to a real person, or we still, or
in the next 18 years, in the next 3. I mean, this is
so
not the future. This is we're talking about integrating technology. We are not talking about creating it.
Okay.
The question becomes, what does that world look like? And then the second thing that I would be thinking about, a couple of rogue waves, would be changing demographics, right? Up until the last few years, we've really been figuring out how to drive consumption among youth and middle-aged people.
Yep.
Now we're going to have to figure out how to drive consumption among an aging group.
Silver Revolution.
And what does that mean? What does that mean for those people to suddenly have individualized relationships and move from the mass market to true market of one? How do you sell? It's a different world.
Yeah. No. Whole different world. Okay. So the future can be predicted after all? Or it doesn't matter?
We can know a lot more about the future than we choose to. And you don't need more information, you just need different eyes.
Yeah.
If you do that, if you ask the 3 questions we talked about up front, am I fighting the last war? Do I suffer from the elephant problem? Am I using binoculars instead of a radar? You go a long way to just looking at a situation, any situation, and knowing more than anybody else in the room, because they are choosing to be blind to what is obviously next.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.